Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the Therapist Take podcast. We're going to talk about therapeutic separations. This isn't one that you want to miss, so don't go anywhere. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Josh.
We're back.
We're back.
How was your break?
It was good. How was yours?
Good. For people that don't know, we don't do anything from when the podcast is off. We're done. This is all we do. And so I know you need to get back to work, so I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I've been doing nothing but
Yeah.
waiting for
So
this.
if we're a little rusty, it's just because we haven't been. This is all we do.
This is all we do. We've been doing nothing.
Wouldn't that be nice though? If this.
Would it?
I don't know. Yeah, it's like
Would we be as good at this if we
That's
didn't
that's
do
how
anything
I think
else?
that's how retirement is for people when they plan for it, right. Their whole life is retirement, and then they retire and they're like, I'm bored.
Yeah,
Like,
what else
and then
is
they go
there?
and they go back to work, right? And I know a lot of people that don't have to go back to work but choose to
Yeah.
because they're losing their minds,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, that's not all we do. We've been very busy, but I'm glad to get back to doing this because this is very therapeutic for me. In a lot of ways, I don't know if it's that way for you, but it is for me. I like it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad, Josh. It's a checkbox for me. I got it. For you. I'm being you now.
Okay, you're being me now.
It's
Thanks
a
for letting me
checkbox
know.
for me. I just check it off.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's probably true. It's not that I
Yeah.
don't enjoy it. I think you enjoy it more.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's always better in my head, though. In my head, you enjoy it a ton.
Okay. Well, then I'm not going to
That's
argue
a
with
set-
your head. Okay?
That's because I'm a 7 on Enneagram.
Oh.
You know,
what does
the-
that even mean? when
The
you say it?
adventurer.
Oh, the adventurer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we are working on getting Whitney and Shannon back in here to do a podcast on the Enneagram.
Yep.
And hopefully a workshop to go along with that because they
Yep.
are very good at that. But
They
yeah,
are.
so 7 is I'm a adventurer, which typically means like things usually are a lot more fun in my head. So like I'm the one that's driving on vacation to the destination, and on the way to the destination, I'm thinking, oh, you know where I want to go next year, So yeah. So, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. In my mind, you really love this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good. We can live in that reality.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a kind of a nuanced topic, something that a lot of people in the therapy world have heard of therapeutic separations.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure if, people who, just lay people, regular civilians out there have heard of a therapeutic separation. But it is a therapeutic intervention that is familiar to a lot of couples clinicians and betrayal trauma clinicians and I think probably discernment counselors.
Yes,
Discernment counselors is a whole different type of couples therapy that which we'll have to just spend another episode to talk about what that is. But it is an intervention that's I think is becoming more and more common. Do you feel like?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's seeing it or hearing about it more.
Right.
Or couples that have come in that have said they've done this before or
Right.
done it with another therapist or. Of course, one of the workbooks that we have that I don't have it on here, but I think it was Mary Lee that even wrote kind of a workbook for.
Oh, yeah.
It's geared toward couples that are going to do a therapeutic separation that have been impacted by sex addiction specifically, but it still has all the same principles and stuff
That what we're going to
right,
point out
because it
today.
doesn't necessarily have to be for specifically
Specific
for that,
topics,
right?
yeah.
Right. So that's what we're going to talk about. So before we dive into the structure of it, I'm going to give everybody kind of a breakdown here in just a second. But let me kind of just cover the really quick housekeeping things. The first thing, just to remind everybody to, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Ring that bell so you can be notified when more of our videos are posted or when we go live. We do have tutorial videos on YouTube. This is actually the first episode that's broadcasting live on our website, so it's something new that we're trying. So head over to our website and see if it's working. But also, to help please those YouTube algorithms, hitting the like button is really helpful. In fact, I've noticed a lot of people lately are only asking people to hit that like button because I don't know if there's been a shift in the algorithm. So it seems like the like button has become a little bit more than the subscribe, more important than the subscribe button. But this episode will what we do is I will take this live version and edit it up and then put it on the podcast platform, the audio platforms, and so and then also I'll re-upload it back to YouTube in the edited format. So if you want the version that kind of has some of the fluff cut out and everything, then you can watch it there. But if you're on the audio platforms, please give us a 5-star review. If you feel like saying something nice in the comments, that's great, but not necessary. But just stop what you're doing real quickly, go hit the 5 stars, and then come back to the episode. So, all right, did I cover everything,
I think
Carrie?
you got
I know
it.
that you're really, really particular about wanting me to do that.
The housekeeping stuff
Yeah.
is very important to me.
I guess the other thing that I always forget to mention is checking out the description or the show notes, because we try to put a lot of resources in there and then as I go back and edit these videos, when I re-upload it, I usually put even more in there. So when the edited version comes out, there's even usually more links and resources than what the live version has. So, okay, well that's that. Let's go over the episode breakdown real quickly. So we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, therapeutic disclosures if you're just tuning in. And the first thing we're going to talk about is what is it? Of course, we got to define it. And then who is it for? That's a really important question to discuss. We're going to get into the structure of it, so how it gets set up, and this will vary from practitioner to practitioner, but I think it's probably got a lot of similarities. And then we're just going to talk about certain tips that you can do to maximize your chances of it being a successful experience. And so and on top of that, you're as we talk about success in a therapeutic disclosure, it might surprise you a little bit on what success looks like too, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So all right, that's it. So
What is a therapeutic separation,
what
Josh?
is it? How is the separation therapeutic? All right, so the first thing I think it's important to notice is that I think most people know what a separation is, and then there are also things like legal separations where you can go through your attorneys, and my assumption is that like this probably usually happens when there's children involved and
property,
assets and things like that have to go through the legal route because the couple isn't getting along, which is usually why people separate or why they feel the need to, right? So a therapeutic separation, in a nutshell, adds structure and purpose to the separation.
Right.
So it's for couples that are, not doing well. Their coupleship is in trouble, basically. And but they're still taking their marriage or their coupleship seriously. Like that. They're not willing to just take the path of least resistance and just say, you know what, we're going to separate, and because it makes getting a divorce easier down the road. It's kind of like it's hard to just go from 0 to 60, for example. So, I want to get one foot out the door and then get comfortable with that, and then I take the other foot out the door. And I think that's how most people perceive a separation, which is why it's the idea of a separation in general, whether it's therapeutic or not, is often quite scary for people.
Yeah.
You agree?
No, I think it is. I think just the word separation, right?
Yeah.
It has it's powerful. It packs a lot of punch when you say it.
Sure.
And I think that lots of people have separated, whether it's been in their marriages or in dating relationships or whatever, right? Even have some separation between their families. And I think that's kind of a normative experience. A therapeutic separation is different because it's much more intentional, right?
Right.
And it's much more purposeful. A lot of people use informal separation as a, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't like this. Let's just separate. Let's just make this change, right? And that's kind of, that's as far as often you can get, right?
Right.
And a lot of people make that decision impulsively, and a lot of people still make an informal separation decision with a lot of thought. But therapeutic separation is going to be very intentional, like I said, about
Yeah.
what does it mean to say we are separated.
Right. Right. And I want to be clear on something too. Like when I said that, people who choose to do an informal separation might be choosing a path of least resistance. I do think that's true often, but I want people to know that if that is what you did, you know, that might be what you needed to do.
Yeah,
So I'm
sure.
not being judgmental toward anybody that has chosen to separate and then ultimately as a way of kind of getting out so that you can move forward with a divorce.
No, sure.
And so, but when couples get to us and they're working on things
Right.
here, we definitely know at that point they're not really interested in a knee-jerk reaction to the problems that they're having.
That's right. That's right.
They're really wanting to try to figure things out to see, what they can do and how to give their coupleship the best chance
Yeah.
of making it.
It seems weird, right? Sometimes counterintuitive to think, let's go to therapy, let's separate in order to maybe have the best outcome that we're together.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
paradox.
It is our
And
favorite
how
thing.
I feel about that.
I know.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
that's something I say a lot is that I really believe that mental health and relational health are found in paradoxes. Um, you know, being apart might be the best chance of being together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Loving yourself might be the best. Loving yourself first might give your relationship the best, or might position you to love your partner in the way that your partner wants to be loved.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
By you. So putting yourself first might make them feel like they're first, right? I mean, it's so, I don't know why it's that way. It's wild to me though, like the paradoxical nature of human beings,
Yeah.
so,
Keeps us on our toes.
right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so a therapeutic separation is very different from like what you might think of a traditional separation. And I think the key is what you said is that intentionality and purpose are really the two ingredients there. It is not one foot out the door to make the next step of getting a divorce easier. It's putting space between the two of you so that you can really do some self-analysis and working on yourself, self-care without the noise of the other. I mean,
Yeah.
I always call the marriage or a committed relationship is your firstborn. Like the first baby you have is the relationship. Like that is your first child, and we all know those of us that are parents know how hard it is sometimes to get anything done when the children are screaming and demanding, and things are a chaotic mess there, and we just want to get away. Which parents should do that sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so this is sometimes in relationships, you got to put that space between you, and it's hard and difficult because we know how the brain reacts to that in terms of our
Yeah.
attachment
Yeah.
or our trauma, our fears of abandonment and things like that.
Yeah.
And but you got to do it anyways sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes it's also an attempt to just make some kind of change.
Sure.
Because a lot of times by the time couples come to see us, they haven't been struggling for a brief period of time. They've usually been struggling for a long time, right? And maybe it's been getting bigger and bigger over time, but they need something different, right? And so another purpose, I suppose, of the separation is to start injecting some change into the system.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I think another kind of the other paradoxical piece to it is that you're doing it to give the relationship the best chance of togetherness, right? Is to separate, but it kind of what we talk with couples about a lot of times is that togetherness doesn't really necessarily mean that it's the same marriage.
Right.
So
Right.
do I get to be, how do I position myself or us to do this in such a way where we get to be together on the other side of this in a healthy, productive way, but you probably don't get to be in the same marriage with
Right.
each other.
Right. It's another shedding of skin
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah. And a marriage is not, the marriage isn't um, uh, an entity like, I'm an entity, or my partner's an entity. It's what's existing between us, right? It's the exchange, which are governed by rules, basically, and the rules have to change usually.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that until you have able to pull yourself out and kind of pan out and look at the world and how you want to operate in it, and then how does that fit how does a relationship fit in that is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Right.
So I hope that, I don't know, is that clear as mud?
I don't know. We'll see. Let's keep going. I think it all
Right.
builds, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So just one more thought on what is it? I think a third piece is intentionality, purpose, and I would say the other piece is that it's usually led by a therapist or somebody coaching you through
I
it.
was going to say the accountability.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's called therapeutic, so it really even has the word therapist in it, right? Which is helpful
Right.
because in general, we do better when we've got something to answer for, right? And someone to consult
Right.
with, well, how do I know to do this? What tends to be the most helpful for people? And
Right.
that can be the role of some kind of guide.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about who's it for.
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously it's for couples, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be for married couples. But I
No.
think
Committed.
committed,
Committed, yeah.
is definitely would be required. I don't know if it's probably better to talk about who it's not for.
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
it's not for the it's not for couples that are on the fence. I don't know. Maybe it is a little
Maybe.
bit.
I mean, I think this is where kind of it really is individualistic,
Yeah.
right? I mean, by the time people get to us, sometimes they're very clear about, I want this to be
Yeah.
over, right? Most of the
Right.
time, people are probably a little bit in and
Yeah.
out.
Well, let me ask it to you this way: when would you not to do with it if someone's like, I heard about this therapeutic separation thing, and based upon kind of how you have assessed the situation, it might be something you would balk at. Like, I don't know
Well,
if that'd be good.
I think violence,
Okay, yeah, for sure.
right? I mean, so we're just not kind of going to be trying to get you guys to agree on certain things. We got to get you safe.
Right.
Right.
That's where a
So-
traditional separation
Right.
might come in handy.
Right. The other one would be maybe if there was a lot of disparity between their desire to stay together.
Okay.
So if one person really wants out and the other person's desperately begging and willing to stay, that I don't know that therapeutic separation even has a lot of value. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just because they have such different interests.
Yeah. I think that's what I was trying to get at when I was saying on the fence.
Okay.
But then when I said on the fence, I was like, no, a lot of them are on the fence.
Right.
But I think, as you said, like how'd you say it?
The disparity.
Right, disparity of their goals,
Yes.
purpose, right? Yeah, so basically, like if they're really on the opposite ends on what they want, that can do it
Yeah.
too. But I think also if a couple can do can capture the essence of a therapeutic disclosure while
Separation.
Oh, I'm sorry. We just talked about therapeutic disclosures the
Yeah.
other day.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's another thing. Therapeutic disclosures. Just
Right.
did a YouTube video on that.
Yeah.
Go check
yeah,
it out.
Yep.
A therapeutic separation. You know, a reason I might not want to do that or caution a couple from doing that is if they can capture the essence of a therapeutic separation without separating. That would be more ideal. I mean, we don't really. This isn't our knee-jerk reaction to
Yeah.
helping couples get better. Is
No.
to present the
No.
intervention of a therapeutic
Right.
separation.
And I don't even know how many therapists present it necessarily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, here's your 3 choices to work with me.
Right.
It's usually something that clients bring to us, or we just kind of reflect we haven't made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
Right? These are the roadblocks. So
And to be clear too, I think a lot of times when clients bring it up, they're not really bringing up a therapeutic separation. They're just bringing up separation.
Yeah.
You know, like feel like and sometimes it just comes out in like I just feel like I need space. I feel,
Yes.
you know, like I can't breathe, or and
Mm-hmm.
then that's when we might say, well, have you heard, if you're going to separate, have you heard of a therapeutic
Right.
separation?
Right.
But you're right, like people don't come in on like the first session or the third or fourth or fifth and we're like, okay, we can do this
Yeah.
and
Right.
you know, and so I think that kind of speaks to, you know, the volatile is not the right word. I think maybe risky element of it, the vulnerable nature of it.
Okay.
That you know, if we can figure out how to do this without you separating, that's ideal. But if this is what you got to do, this is what
Yeah.
you got to do,
Sure.
and it's really puts in their face and in our face the you know, the seriousness of their situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and probably volatile is right where the volatility of
Of the
the
relationship.
relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Yeah. This is not a first line intervention.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So so that's who it's for. I think we're probably going to spend a
Yeah.
good amount
Most
of
of the
time on how
time.
we set it up. So let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about that.
Okay.
You know, what does it look like basically when we do this? I'm sure it's done differently with
Yeah.
different therapists.
Sure.
I kind of like the contractual
Yeah.
way of doing it, and I've done it different ways, like where I've sometimes given them, you know, Mary Lee's handout um, and kind of let them work through that,
Yeah.
but sometimes I'll sit across from them with my laptop in front of me and kind of just start
Create it.
creating the contract, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That way it takes a little bit longer, a couple more sessions
Mm-hmm.
than to get it done. But it's really like we talked about it. You can see the intentionality behind it when you have to talk about a lot of different things
Mm-hmm.
to get this set up right. But I do think that it's worth it if you're going to separate, and if you're at all interested in would like if I could wave a magic wand and make it to where all your relational problems are together. I mean, are together. All your relational problems are gone, and you could be together happily. Would that be your partner in that vision? Like, do you desire to be happy with that person? And if that's the case, um, I think doing something like this is worth it if you're considering separating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think that's true to say it that way. It's
right.
worth it.
So if we can go ahead and I want to put this graphic on the screen so you guys can see. If you're listening to this too, I'm gonna go over what this visual aid that other people are able to see.
Yeah.
That it just says therapeutic separation contract, and what I've done is I've just put, you know, the different headings or themes or things that we have to address in session to create this agreement on what the separation is going to look like.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read through those just so people that are listening to this know what's on the graphic. So it's the different categories are time frame, you know, so you know how long is this going to last, the residence, so where we're going to stay, correspondence, how we're going to communicate with each other, how are we going to handle emergencies, that's the number 4, or urgencies, number 5. What does a couple interaction look like in this time frame? That's the 6th point. Number 7 is how are we going to handle holidays or special occasions like kids' birthdays or other events that are going to come up during this time frame. You know, how are we going to do finances and property? You know, the agreement there. The rules for autonomy. So in other words, we're going to be separated, but that doesn't mean we get to go out in the world and live like single people.
Or it
Right.
does, but
Well, I mean, you can do that if you want, but you have to remember that you're still in a committed
That's right.
relationship. Basically, is what I'm
right.
saying.
Yeah.
And then what does counseling look like, and what's the purpose and goals there
Yeah.
for that? That's the 10th one. So when we're creating a contract, those are the different pieces. I think it's important to start out. We're not gonna be able to go through all 10 of these in
Detail.
the short amount of time that we have here. Maybe what we can do at some point is write a blog or something on it, and I can link that. But I do think it's important to talk about the time frame, though.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
what are we? What do you recommend usually?
I mean, I just really think you need about 90 days.
I think minimum for
To,
sure.
because I just think anything shorter than that, you don't have enough
Mm-hmm.
data to tell any differences that are making a difference. And I do think the phase of life
Mm-hmm.
can, say if is 90 days can sound very short or it can sound very long. I think if you have little tiny babies, 90 days, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if your time is less with that baby, it can feel very, very long. And I get that versus if you have
Sure.
a 16-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Kid. So,
But also too being displaced, if you're
yes,
having to rent an
yes.
apartment or
Double the
staying with your
expenses.
your best friend that you're sleeping on their couch might be like, dude, when you gonna leave?
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot
I
of
mean,
pressure
there's a
there.
lot of
Right.
things, but I still think that if anything shorter of 90 days, like I said, I just don't know that you get enough data of what enough differences to see what makes a difference.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, especially because when we look at that 10th category, which is the counseling, which
Yeah.
is really important. And Dad, I think that the recommendation I give people is that you need to be going every week because the time frame I usually give is 3 to 6 months. No less than 3, no more than 6, and of course, it can be modified. It's not a legal document,
Right, right, right.
and but it is important to write it down because I think our brains just commit to it better when we see it
Yes.
written like that, especially in our own handwriting or we see our
Yeah.
signature next to it or something like that. But as part of that, okay, if I got 90 days or 100 at most 180 days, like I'm gonna have to really get on the ball on the work I have to do because why you're doing this
Yeah.
it becomes really important, and that is I've got to figure me out to figure us out.
So I think that my kind of 1 in 10, you mentioned counseling. During this time, what we encourage is for each person to be going to individual counseling.
That's right.
Right. And couples counseling, again, can be something that's part of this. During that 90 days, do they have couples therapy or do they not? And if so, how frequently?
Right.
But for sure, we're going to encourage each of them to have individual
Right.
counseling during that,
100%.
3 to 6 month separation
In
period.
fact, I don't know how you do it
Otherwise.
otherwise effectively.
I mean, I'm sure there's a way.
Yeah.
Humans are
You mean there's a way
amazing.
different how we do it?
I know, but
That's better?
all I mean
What?
is that the function of that is supposed to be about growing in self-awareness, growing in support. And so if you don't have that built-in space, whether through counseling or spiritual work or meditative work or other relational work, then really the only thing that's different is that maybe you don't live together and time
Right.
passes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I agree. And so basically what happens then is that your couples therapist becomes the like a liaison for a little bit. Like that therapist, or this is how we do it anyways. We're gonna help you find the individual therapist, or we're gonna task you with finding an individual therapist. Then if they're not in our group that we work with here, we sign releases so that we
Right.
can talk with them because we're then, after we agree to the plan, you will then execute the plan and you will start working with your individual therapist. That will then kind of relay to the couples therapist like readiness for modifications to the contract.
Right,
So this
right.
contract we talk about is a living, breathing
That's right.
document. So because like if we get down to like correspondence, for example, the how we're going to communicate with each other. This will vary based upon the severity or the need for being apart. So sometimes people just need the type of space that involves very little
Right.
engagement or interaction or correspondence
Yep.
to the other person
Yep.
with the other person. But you're not going to go 6 months doing that.
Yeah.
That is not, in my opinion, considering the main purpose of doing this
The
is to
goal,
give
yeah.
the togetherness a shot
Yeah.
here. But you might need 6 weeks or maybe even 2 months of the 90 days really having this kind of eat, pray, love existence that doesn't require you to leave the country,
Right.
you know, to do it, where you start really, you're really answering the question or trying to answer the question of who am I without my partner?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I outside of this relationship? You know, I've lost myself in this, and I need to reestablish that person that
Yeah.
once was,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, but then that's kind of what you're conveying to your individual
Individual therapist.
therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and then the individual therapist, and just had this happen recently. Individual therapist contacts me, says, "Hey, we need to talk." Right? That's
What do we do?
what they're supposed to do, right? And then and if it's time to make modifications, we can make modifications. You know, so but there's a lot of things when we go over these different categories with people, they don't. Some of them, there's like we don't really need to address that. I think we're okay with.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes finances is that way. You know, we're just going to keep paying bills the same and handling money the same
Right.
and things
Right.
like that. Um, Urgencies and emergencies
Mm-hmm.
can may vary. Some of these categories are just easy for couples, and some are
Some
hard,
are hard.
and
Mm-hmm.
some that are easy for other people to tackle are hard for others.
Yes.
And
Yes. Very
so it just
individualized.
varies,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's important to tackle all of those because and still something you didn't
Yeah,
expect comes up, right?
we've never been able to find a contract. Every
Yeah,
time
sure.
we do this, I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, what if we add this to the contract? And eventually you're like, oh my gosh, you
There's
can't,
yeah.
can't
We're up
add
to
it all.
10.
Yeah, right. That's
It
still,
started with 5,
I
and we're up
know,
to 10
I know.
topics we have to cover. But that's kind of, I mean, I hope that kind of paints a picture for people
Yeah.
on, the process of how it goes. And then
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, like you should start seeing, like, if togetherness is becoming more and more of a possibility, then that means the couples therapy is going to start becoming more and more of a possibility
Right,
again.
right, right.
And so your couples therapist really is kind of on reserve,
Mm-hmm.
and you're taking your marriage and you're putting it here on this shelf, saying, and one thing I'll ask couples a lot is like, why in our culture, like when we start having marital or family problems like that, we've got to figure that out right now. Like, can't we just say, I'm just gonna put this right here for safekeeping. I don't have to figure it out right now. I'm gonna work at figuring me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, if your partner isn't willing to cooperate with that, it only takes. I always say it takes two people to dance the dance. It takes one person in the dance.
Yes.
And that's a risk you take. But I do think like it's a mistake to put that kind of pressure on couples
Mm-hmm.
and relationships to that when there's a hiccup that you got to resolve it right now, when the thing I might need to resolve is something going on within me,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to be able to have that space to do that, whether it's
That's part
emotional
of the
space or
reason.
physical
That's why
space.
this is a flip of the script, right? Which is really important and helpful.
Right.
Yeah, and that couple interaction section should change throughout the 3 to 6 months too, right? You
Oh
may
yeah, glad
have
you brought that up.
not see each other at all or see each other only in therapy
Mm-hmm.
for a while, and then you may start with, well, what would happen if we met for coffee, and what would happen if and the interaction, are we going to meet for coffee to
Yeah.
talk about the finances, or are we going to meet for coffee, dare I say, to enjoy each other's company,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so those things are going to, again, be individualized and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully shift even throughout that
Right.
agreed time for the
Yeah.
therapeutic separation.
Right. I would even go as far as to say that it's crucial that the interaction change and shift along the way,
Sure.
or at least it's information, like if
It
on
is.
what needs to happen, right? Like,
Right.
because at the end of the time frame, the couple really is. It's not that you can't extend it; you can,
Right.
but you're really trying to hold yourself accountable to the time frame that you've been given to make a decision about what you want to do.
Right, because otherwise, guess what happens? Now this isn't any difference. Now this is just the new normal.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I'm
And
glad
then,
you said it
and
that
now
way.
we've gone from one kind of status quo to another
Right.
status quo.
We're forever in this therapeutic
Right, we're
separation. Now we're
forever
quote
separated.
unquote.
And I think there's
Right.
people that know people that live
Oh
that
yeah.
way, right?
Yeah.
It's not a
Exactly.
judgment call, but most
Right.
of the time, people that are at least coming to therapy and do a therapeutic separation are not willing to just go from one kind of, I don't know, halfway in, halfway out to a different version of halfway in, halfway out.
Right. Yeah, and there's when I'm talking to couples about this, one thing I might say is, the on the other side of this, you might decide that you need to get divorced, or that you want a divorce, and that's what is best for you. But I would rather you make that decision from a healthy mindset, a healthy point of view, about what is good for me and what is not good for me, versus this knee-jerk reaction to this pain that you're feeling, and this pressure that you're feeling, or feeling stuck, and that the only way out is to get a
Is to
divorce,
exit,
right?
yeah.
That's what I would balk at and be cautious over. And so it still might be the same outcome in that sense, that could happen, but at least, if you make that decision from a healthy perspective, there's less chance of you regretting it down the
Yeah,
road,
right.
right?
Yeah, I can't remember who said something, that therapy is often about just trying to minimize and manage regret.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Boy, I hope not, but I
right.
can see
But
I
you
can
can
see where
see,
they're
but
coming
you can
from. Yeah.
see, you can see that built into this agreement, right?
Yeah, sure.
Ooh, if we don't talk about the finances, does that mean the other person gets to go stay at a luxury
Yeah.
hotel for 3 months?
Yeah. That's a weed person versus a wildflower person. Whoever said that. I'm a wildflower person.
Okay, okay, yeah.
That person sees weeds.
And you see wildflowers.
It's the same thing,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but okay,
yeah.
yeah.
All right. So, how do we better ensure successful outcomes on this? The first thing I think that I want to talk about on that is that success doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
being together or being married on the other side of this, and that's hard for people
Yes, it is.
to acknowledge. That's why I was saying earlier that you might find out that success in this might be different than what you were expecting when you first tuned into this podcast. But I mean we're both marriage and family therapists, right? I mean, I think the coupleship, committed relationships, I mean, that's probably why the field attracted us initially, is because we
Sure.
value it, right? So I think, and I think we've talked about this before, so if it still stands from previous conversation, that you and I both agree that we want the couples to stay together. We would like to try to figure that out. That is, to us, the ideal situation, right?
Probably.
Yeah, if we can help them figure out how to stay together. But we also have to acknowledge that may not be the case. That is, like the decisions that they make on what needs to happen for their own well-being and functionality, and
Sure.
to live a healthy, happy life.
That may not be what success is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you have to put that on the table as a possibility,
Yeah.
and that does not mean that you failed.
No. No.
There's a paradox right there, right? People always talk about, someone comes in my office, I really don't want to get divorced. I've had 2 failed marriages. I was
Yeah.
like, well, they were successful until
They weren't.
they weren't,
That's
right? I mean,
Yeah.
and it's just
It's a
wildflower versus weeds.
Well, yeah, perspective of just staying in a
So-
relationship that's unhealthy,
Sure.
just to stay. Right. Remember, speaking of being marriage and family therapists, when we studied marriage, right, the 2 constructs that you're measuring was the status of the marriage and the quality of the marriage. The status doesn't have to indicate the quality.
Yeah.
Just because you're together doesn't mean it's a good relationship,
Yeah.
right? And so that's part of what the separation can also help to reveal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, being together, if
Yeah.
we're together just for the sake of together, but it's not a good, is that good for me?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you really think about it, like the the task before us when it comes to like people who desire to be married, like I want to find someone, I want to be in this committed relationship and live forever with this one person. I'm in this monogamous relationship. Like, it's really a daunting
It's vast
task.
and daunting. Yeah.
But you're talking about your whole life in a relationship that requires two people to work together in the same direction, in tandem, right? Being in sync with each other for decades, knowing, well, probably not knowing at the time, but one thing that we know is that those two individuals that make up that relationship are constantly changing. So compatibility becomes not just a thing that you have to figure out once. It's an endeavor that lasts the entire relationship.
Yeah.
What? The fact that 50% of couples are able to do it is really amazing.
It's remarkable.
I mean, that is really, it is remarkable. And I'm not even sure that those statistics include, I wonder if it groups both happy and unhappily
I think it's
married.
I think it's just measuring status.
Right, yeah.
Their marital status, married or not. Yeah.
Are they happily married?
I know.
Of course, I would love to see that number go
Well,
up.
remember Gottman's 7 types of marriage?
Mm-hmm.
Was it only 3 of them were happy?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I think so.
I have to go back and review that.
Yeah.
We'll have to put a link. Is that it's a book or is that an article?
Both.
Both, okay.
Yeah, but I think he has
Okay.
it in his.
So remind me of that. It's Gottman's 7 Types of Marriage. I'll put a link in the description of the video. I think before we sign off here on the tips for success here, I think let's talk about the pitfalls real quickly.
Okay.
Like, I think to kind of, if we talk about the pitfalls, I think people are going to really get what the tips are.
Yeah, I
on
agree.
how to make this work, right? So, what's the first one you think of?
Not having enough structure.
Right.
Right. Saying, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll just keep it the same. Okay, hold on. Let's think this through.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
What that usually means when people say that is they don't want to think about it. And I, as much as we understand it, I promise you in 2 weeks, if you haven't changed anything about who's taking care of the kids, even though one person's not living there, you're going to not think that was a very wise decision. Right. So I think that you may, if you're going to go to a therapist and do a therapeutic separation, stick with the plan, right? Do the work that you've already created.
Yeah, I agree. The one I think of is not following through, like basically making compromises to your plan, or like, well, this one time I'm going to show up at the house when I agreed I wouldn't do that, or I'm gonna succumb to the temptation to text my partner when I agreed I wouldn't do that. And I think this part is so hard, like, but I do think that it's necessary. Like, if you are finding yourself compelled to break these rules, you really need to be working with your individual therapist on why.
Yes.
Like, why is this so hard for me?
What's
like,
going on?
Being with myself in the uncertainty of what's going on with my partner, why is this so unsettling and difficult? And I think what people often find out is that there's just a lot of injury from life that just has gone,
I know.
or what word am I looking for? Like, untouched or unmedicated or untreated.
Yeah.
Just kind of ignored and swept under the rug, and I think we all have done that. I don't think it's a character defect or anything. I just think it's part of being human. If I can put a Band-Aid on something and it gets better, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why do I want to go through?
Why would I go get stitches? Yeah.
Right. And so I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to try
Start
to
with
do
Band-Aid.
right. So, so.
And I think another pitfall could be just unforeseen events or traumas and we can't do anything about that other than deal with them as they happen. But that's when you circle your wagons, your therapist, your team of therapists, your family, your support, and say, oh boy, I did not see this coming.
That's why we put that number 7 on the holidays and special occasions on there. Hey, you really have to look into. You're talking about if you're going to do this 6 months.
Yeah,
that's half a year. That means everything that happens throughout a year.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
But there are also going to be things that you might know are coming up that just happen once or twice ever blue moon, but you need to address, hey, there's this thing coming up, like
Right.
it needs to find its way into that agreement, or else you're going to get there and then you experience this setback because we
Right.
didn't
We didn't make a plan.
plan for
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I think that goes back to your first point on the pitfall is not is not having the structure that you need. So a lot of times people get into this, and I really do think, I know it's good to have people, kind of fill out the workbooks and the questions and stuff like that, but in doing both kind of versions where I sit in front of them and just type it right there in front of them, and versus kind of having them doing that part of it, and in comparing the two, I think that the version where I'm sitting and
With
doing it
them.
with them, because when I'm doing it, like they know that I am expecting to finish this document, and when they're doing it, it's like we have so many sessions of like, they can't get, they won't or can't get it finished, and when I'm doing it, it's like, we got to get this
We
done.
gotta get this done. Here,
You know?
print. Yeah.
So it's just something I've learned in the process of doing these, I felt has been more beneficial. But it goes to that point of that pitfall that you're talking about. It's like when you don't have the right kind of structure with it, you
Nothing to contain you.
right.
If it falls. Yeah.
Another pitfall I just want to mention too is that if your individual therapist doesn't know that you're doing this. So sometimes I'll send people to individual therapy, and they tell their individual therapist that they're doing a therapeutic separation. They might even give the contract to that therapist, but then the therapist will proceed to just, to do what we would normally do when somebody comes in, and just kind of like, what are your goals and things. Like, if you don't tell that therapist that, hey, I'm in this separation and I got 3 to 6 months to figure myself out.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm here to do. So, and so the therapist, it's kind of like if I'm sending someone for EMDR, and I'm checking up on them, and they're like, 5, 6 sessions later, they haven't done any EMDR. I was like, well, does your therapist know that that's what you're there to
Right.
do?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's really important to communicate to your therapist, like, this is why I'm
Right.
here.
I need help with this.
Right. And then to get that therapist in contact with
the couples therapist.
the couples
Yeah.
therapist, yeah. Which is hard to do when, I know for us, when there are therapists outside of this office, therapists are really hard to get a hold of.
Yeah.
Even for other therapists, trying to get a hold of other
Yeah.
therapists.
It is.
So,
It is.
so that what that means, tips for success is
Yeah.
have enough structure,
Having the structure.
just work hard to follow the rules as close. This is a time to kind of be rigid with them.
Yeah.
We don't typically like rigidity in relationships, but for this particular thing, trying to stick as close as possible to the rules as you can
Yeah.
is important. And 3 is you get into that individual therapy room and get to work.
That's right. That's right. Really use, most of us aren't going to have, a dozen therapeutic separations in our lifetime.
Right.
And so it's a very unique and perhaps even special time. So take advantage of it.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
100%. Right. Well, if we can just real quickly put the book on screen, that I'm not going to promote this book as saying it's a fantastic book that all couples should get this, but it is the book that was, I think you've read it cover to cover,
Yeah.
haven't you?
It's been a long time, but yeah.
Called Taking Space. And it, I definitely have read a good portion of it, and it was the inspiration for me to develop my own unique way of working with couples
Yeah.
and doing these therapeutic separations. And so I just wanted people to have the source,
Sure.
but also too, this is something that we do a lot with, not just with couples who've experienced betrayal trauma, but it's any couple that really is just needing that space, or one of them needs that space,
Yeah.
and trying to do it under the same roof just isn't working. But for those people that are watching this, because I think I do have this categorized in the betrayal trauma couple recovery category, I just want to also mention Michelle Mays' book, especially for the partners who have been for the one who has been betrayed. Her book, The Betrayal Bind.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
which I also have linked in the description of the video. So,
Great.
two great resources.
Yes.
And then I think we should try to get a blog together on this. I think it'd be
Okay.
just a simple short blog, kind of outline kind of how we do it. I think might help people get a better
Yeah. Idea.
visual. But I'll also like people like if we can we put do we have our Instagram handle on there, Hannah? If you want to follow us on Instagram, which is just at Family Solutions OK, I believe. I'll try to post that graphic for anybody who was listening to this and didn't see it. I'll post it to our Instagram page so that you can see
See the categories.
see that visual, with the categories on there.
Yeah. Good.
I'll go ahead and put the book picture of the book up there with it. So,
Wonderful.
all right, Carrie. Well, we did it
I
again.
know, we did it again.
We're back. 2025, rock
Here
and
we
rolling.
go. We started
Oh,
it up.
let's mention who we got in the lineup
Oh.
coming up. We got Mary coming next week.
Yep.
This is going to be. I can't wait for this
Okay.
because I don't know a lot about this, and she's going to talk about climate anxiety.
Yeah.
And which I didn't really know. I mean, we live in Oklahoma, so it's not to get political or anything, but it's a very red state here. So haven't really heard a lot of people talk about climate anxiety from as a therapeutic thing. But Mary, I've talked to Mary a little bit about it, and I mean, apparently it's there's a lot of people even here in the state of Oklahoma, even red states, have people that are really battling this anxiety, and so she's really found a lot of passion in helping with that, and so we're going to talk to her. I can't wait for that. And then the week after her, we have David Otwell coming in. And so if you guys haven't seen or listened to our podcast on why we stopped using polygraphs, go check that out. Listen to that first. We mentioned David in that podcast, and he is a polygraph examiner, and he's the one that we would use back when we did it. He's a great dude. He's agreed to come in and talk to us about polygraph exams. And then the week after that, we're having attorney at law, Brandy Morgan, coming in. I'd like to have her for multiple. There's a lot of things that she would be great to have come in, but she is a therapist that is also an attorney. And she's going to talk to us on this episode about why therapists need attorneys.
Yep. One.
And so
yeah, we got great info coming.
We got some. Yeah, we got some.
Yeah.
Some heavy hitters coming down the line.
We do.
So.
We do.
All right. Well, that's it. We'll thank you guys for being here, and see you back next time. Thanks for being here, Carrie.